Welcome to our CRI lesson today, and our lesson today is about relationship between fasting and prayer. Relationship between fasting and prayer. Now Bible reading, it is from Matthew chapter 6. Matthew 6, then 16 to 18. That is where our reading is coming from, and we are focusing on the relationship between fasting and prayer. So, we shall start by defining the term fasting. Fasting. Fasting means denying oneself food and drinks for a period of time so as or in order to pray. Denying oneself food and drinks for a period of time in order to pray. We can also say denying oneself food and drinks for a spiritual purpose, or denying food and drinks, denying oneself food and drinks for a spiritual purpose. Therefore, I want to say that fasting is done with a purpose. Now, having said that, I want to get a number of relationships between the prayer that includes one, the way these two are related. How is fasting and prayer related? Are they very different? Are they very similar? We want to look at the relationship. How are they? One of the relationship is that both of are religious, both are religious practices. They are religious practices. So, in any case, we have somebody is fasting, and during that time, it is an ideal time for prayer. Somebody can be praying, and during that prayer, one decides to practice fasting. So both of them, they are religious purposes. They are done with religious might. All of them, or the two of them, relates with God. Both relate. Both of them relate with God. Anytime one is fasting or one is praying, they are relating with God. Something else. We can also say that both are dependent on God. Anytime one is involved in either prayer or fasting, they depend on God. Whatever one is doing, either is praying or fasting, they have to depend on God. Something else. Both of them, both fasting and prayer, demand or require humility. When one is fasting, they demand humility in approaching God. So either one is fasting or is praying, then we need humility when one is approaching God in either situation, either fasting or praying. Now, we can also say that either of them, both of them, they can be done. Both of them can be done individually or communally. By this I mean, an individual can decide to fast. It is allowed and it is possible. Or an individual can decide to say or to converse with his or her God. One can decide to converse with God individually. Or sometimes it can be a group of people that they decide that we have to fast for this particular event, for the success of this event. Or they can say we are going to fast because we have a certain problem and we want to fast and pray so that God can intervene and help us. So both can be done individually or communally. Something else is that fasting involves prayers. Yeah. Fasting is not just fasting, not just denying yourself the comforts, the luxuries, just for pressure. You just do it, and when you are fasting, most of the times we involve prayers. And both of them, fasting and prayer, they have the four aspects of prayer. Both have the four aspects of prayer. Namely, the first one is worship. When one is fasting, one is allowed even to worship. Something else that is involved there is confession. Confession. People confess their sins during fasting, and it is allowed. Also, something else that is involved there is thanksgiving. During this time, thanksgiving is also welcome. It is possible. And lastly, we have supplication. So these are the four aspects of prayer, and they are also involved. They can also be applied in worship and in fasting. So worship is there. In fasting, one is around to worship. One is allowed to confess, to hold confession sessions. They also have thanksgiving. It can be given preference at this time, and also supplication is there. Now, having said this, these are the few relationships, beginning with they are all religious practices. They all relate with God. Both of them demand humility in approaching God. Both of them can be done individually and can also be done communally. Fasting cannot just be fasting, it needs to involve the prayers. And then fasting and prayers have the four aspects of prayer, which includes worship, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. Now, why is fasting important? Why should we practice this one? Yeah? What happens? What is the use of this? One of the importance, so let me cite or mention in some importance of fasting. Importance of fasting to a Christian. In this case, we are looking at a Christian because these are the people who knows the aspects of prayers. So, one of the importance is that when fasting, we have what we call an interrupted communion with God. One of the importance is uninterrupted. Uninterrupted communion with God. This means when somebody is fasting, we have no interruption. You have peace. There is silence. There is no disturbance. So, an interruption communion with God. That is one of the importance of fasting. Something else, one is able to avoidance of day-to-day of ordinary day-to-day activities. One has to avoid day-to-day activities so that you can have a time with God. Day-to-day activities. Somebody can be a farmer, and this time when you are fasting, you need to stay away from your responsibilities so that now you concentrate with fasting activities. That is worship, that is confession, that is thanksgiving. You involve yourself in that. It makes us concentrate more in prayers. Another importance, it makes us to concentrate more in prayers. One has that time to concentrate in prayers. And also, the other thing is that it shows that we consider prayer to be vital. It shows that we consider prayers to be important or to be vital. That is, we have given it value, we have given it preference, so that's why we are taking it. And then the other importance is that Jesus himself taught his disciples that fasting makes prayers more effective. So with the fasting, prayers becomes effective. So let me have the other point here. Number 5. Jesus taught his disciples that fasting makes prayers more effective. In other words, we say those prayers which are done during fasting, they are more powerful. They have a lot of effect. Yeah? So we need to fast as Christians, because during those times we have seen that we have what we call an interrupted communion with God. We have to avoid ordinary day-to-day activities. We make fasting to a Christian, it makes him or her to concentrate more in prayers. Also, it shows that we consider prayers to be vital. And also, Jesus taught disciples that fasting makes prayers more effective. We are Christians, we are followers of Jesus Christ, and whatever Jesus Christ taught his disciples is what we follow as Christians. Now, we cannot also forget to say that it is a good reason. We have a good reason to fast. One of the reasons why we fast, reasons why we fast. Reasons why we need to fast. The reasons that fasting is a need. One of the reasons is that God will reward those who are fasting. God will reward those who are fasting. Remember, Jesus himself was fasting. And therefore, God will reward those people who are doing just like Jesus was doing. And Jesus was doing what his Father was ordering him to do. So, one reason is that God will reward those who are fasting. Also, it brings one nearer to God. Fasting brings one nearer to God. So once you are fasting, you are very close to your God. You come closer to God. It also shows dependence on God. Yeah? Fasting shows dependence on God. So that anybody who is out there and they can see you, a Christian, fasting, they will automatically know that you depend on God. You know what you do, because when you fast, you go nearer to God. And also, it gives us strength to overcome temptations and sin. So fasting gives us a strength. It gives us strength to overcome temptations. And sins. So if somebody is used to fasting, they are strong enough to overcome temptations and sins. Also, it should not be done by people who are weak due to illness. Fasting should not be done by people who are weak. Due to illness. illness because it can destroy one's health. It can destroy one's health. So it's very advisable to take this session of fasting when we are strong, not when we are sick. When we are ill, it will affect our health. It will affect our health. Because sometimes one is sick, one is supposed to take some certain meals. Sometimes that is advised by the medical practitioners. So we can say that it should not be done by people who are weak. Yeah, that's the reason why we need to look at some of the factors who are weak due to illness, because it can destroy their health. Now, let us see, when is it appropriate? When should we hold what we call fasting? What time is that? What time should we do fasting? Or when is fasting practiced? When we practice fasting in our lives, one of these is period of fasting. Let me use period of fasting. Period of fasting. When are you supposed to fast? One, and we have observed this, it is we fast for the nation. For the nation, especially during this time, we have the COVID-19. People were fasting and praying so that this calamity could leave our country. So people have prayed, people have fasted so that COVID-19 could go out of our country. Also, it could be done during church evangelism, or it can be done for the church. For the church evangelism. So when we are evangelism, so when we are planning to evangelize, we need to fast so that those people who go out, they will be strong. They will be strong to evangelize the gospel. Also, another period that we all know is during Lent. During the time of Lent. During Lent, that is when Jesus was being persecuted, there is that period of 40 days. 40 days when Jesus was persecuted or was tempted by Satan, and he stayed in the wilderness for 40 nights and 40 days. That is 40 nights and 40 days. Jesus fasted, or Jesus was tempted. That one, in our church calendar, we have it there. It usually comes, we usually refer that period as Good Friday or Easter Monday. That is when Jesus conquered the temptations, and then he rose up to heaven. We can also do it when we have a family crisis. During family crisis. Family crisis. When there is a crisis in the family, some people can hold fasting, and it can help. Also, we must be aware that fasting can be done, but fasting is not a public display. We need to know that during fasting, it can be done during this time. Family crisis, during the Lent, during church evangelization or evangelism, or for the nation, especially during the time of COVID-19. Then, we can also say that fasting is not, it is not a public, it's not a public display. So we should know that it is a period when you are not supposed to do it publicly. It is done privately. And then it should have a purpose. We only do it when there is a purpose. Yeah? It should be done when there is a purpose. Not just for show. Now, having said that, I want now to say that fasting and prayer is a means of bringing one nearer to God. Otherwise, fasting and prayer are a means. It is a means of bringing people, it is a means of bringing one near to God. Good. Now I have the questions. Together, I have to give questions so that we can also see whether you have understood the session. I have only 3 questions. Call it work to do, call it questions or work to do. 1, state 3 ways in which prayer and fasting prayer and fasting are related. 1, 2, 3, just list those ones. Number 2, write 2 reasons. 2 reasons why Christians fast. Just list 1, number 2 there. Last 3. The last question is number 3. State 3 benefits Having said that, we shall meet next time or next lesson and continue. Your teacher, Mr. Jero, has bid you bye until next lesson.